All right, welcome back to Season 2, Episode 29 of Health Without the System. It is January 11th, 2026. It is a lazy Sunday morning. I'm Dr. Tim Scott.
And my name's Mia Scott, guys. Welcome back. I hope you guys had an awesome new year, survived the holidays, and we're going to be just catching you guys up.
Absolutely. A lot has happened. I mean, I feel like a lot is always happening in health right now. It's been a really good year for moving things forward. I'm really happy about it. We wanted to circle back and revisit a topic. So we talked about in episode 4, we talked about the food pyramid.
Yes.
And if you haven't realized, within the past week, there's been the new 2025 to 2030 dietary guidelines were dropped, and it's pretty radical.
Yep. So we'll dive in and we'll just a little preview of this podcast here. So we're going to talk about the food pyramid and some New Year's resolutions and things that you can do revolving around the food pyramid.
And New Year's resolution. So we actually take a little bit of a different approach to the New Year's resolution. We're kind of calling this one New Food, New Year, New You. And we'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to it, but kind of how we're going about it and how we encourage people to think about the new year and changes, because sustainability is the most important thing.
Absolutely. All right, guys, let's get started. So what is new with the new U.S. food pyramid and dietary guidelines? So like Tim said, go back to that episode where we talked about the food pyramid. And in that episode, we discussed, obviously, before these changes happened, we discussed what that current food pyramid was, how long it's been around, the foundation, where it came from, how it got to where it's been for a very long time, and not only the corruption involved with that, but not the greatest food pyramid. So we talked about that a long time ago, and now we're very happy with these guideline changes. So we're not going to dive into the history of that, but we're going to talk about what's new now and how that's going to impact patients and people in your health journey.
Yeah, you can get plenty of history. If you listen to our last podcast episode, we did go into the history of the food pyramid, how it came about. And we did mention in there, as other people have said, we're not like the only people who have said this, we're like, this food pyramid essentially needs to be flipped upside down. And it's really funny. You've probably seen some of the memes on social media, but South Park, is kind of like one of those shows that predicts everything, like South Park and The Simpsons, right? Well, in October 2014, season 18, they had an episode where basically, in order to save people or get metabolism right, they had to flip the food pyramid upside down. And I saw Secretary Kennedy had some memes with that. I think some other White House people did, but that's literally what they did.
And what's crazy, just a side segment off of that, is they make it a joke. However, the ironic truth is just, it's so deep. So let's dive into that. So on January 7th, 2026, this was just a few days ago, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, and the Agricultural, which is the USDA, they released this updated dietary guidelines for Americans. So essentially from year 2025 to 2030, this is where this is going to sit. So making it the first major overhaul in decades, bringing back the food pyramid graphic after years of that My Plate approach, and they addressed it completely differently. So
yeah, and My Plate was not terrible. I mean, it was a little step in the right direction, but it still really didn't change the core or the crux of the diet. The new guidelines bringing back the pyramid definitely do change that. And let's just be honest, everything's not perfect, but it's significantly better. It's a major change, and it represents the overhaul we needed. I did want to take one, actually, let's go into it first, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about where it came from.
So what's different this time? Compared with the previous guidelines, they are now putting protein first. Surprise, surprise. Have you guys heard that before? If you guys are listeners of our podcast, we will always hone in on protein first. And this pyramid has basically been inverted. So placing meats, full fat dairy, and proteins at the top as those preferred foods. Now, we will dive into all of that. However, we know protein, building blocks of our muscle mass, works wonders for preserving muscle. We need it for all the cellular function in our body, making us feel fuller, faster, fuller, longer, and good sources of protein also matter, which we will get into that. So first and foremost, protein first. Very thrilled.
Yeah, if you're one of my patients, you hear me talk about protein being important for 2 reasons. First is your metabolism. As Mia mentioned, getting high protein, especially for that first meal of the day, sets your metabolism up for success, really has it processing that glucose in the way that you want to, sometimes helping you break down fat instead of storing it. That's first and foremost. And then number 2, as Mia mentioned, protein is the building block of muscle. I talk about this all the time. Again, if you're a patient of mine, you probably get sick of me saying it, but muscle is basically the key to everything good in your body. You have to have skeletal muscle mass if you want to live a long, healthy life doing the things you love to do. We talk about think about intentional workouts when you're thinking about muscle. Like sometimes people are like, "Well, I don't care. I don't want to be a bodybuilder. I don't care how I look in a bikini anymore." Any of those. But we talk about think about lifting your grandchildren at the age of 50 or 60. Think about, your granddaughter running to you after doing their dance and they want a big hug. You want to be able to lift them up. That's what those workouts. That's why you need that muscle base. And then metabolically, muscle is a sponge for glucose. I talk about this all the time. It's responsible for 85% of non-insulin mediated glucose uptake, meaning you don't need the signal from insulin to tell your muscle to pull glucose out of the bloodstream. So it's extremely
And
important.
we go over that in another podcast as well. It gets first dibs. So your muscle mass is
Episode
so
8, muscle
underrated.
mass.
Yeah, you guys need to review that. And once again, like Tim said, it's not only about looking good, which that's besides the point. But
Sure,
it's
we
about
all want to look
feeling
good.
good and having that longevity compared to
It's
it. So
functionality too. It's not just looks, it's functionality.
yeah, it reminds me of that. It was a longer video meme, but they showed side by side like an elderly person, like probably somebody's grandpa, running around with their grandchildren, picking them up, sitting down, lifting them up to put the topper on a Christmas tree, and then simultaneously in another video, it was showing what he did to build that strength. Kettlebell swings for leaning down, picking up the grandchild, Romanian deadlifts, squatting down, sitting in a chair. So just like Tim said, we really don't put that together. Like it's not just about looking good. You're doing these movements to have consistency. So one day you don't go to sit on a toilet, fall off and can't get up. Like those are the things that you want to have. And for some of you that might laugh, like that'll be you eventually. And if you don't preserve that muscle mass, it will be wasted and it's incredibly hard to get back on, which is why we are so happy that protein they put this first.
Agreed.
So
Protein first is incredibly important. The next thing, we get back to emphasizing whole food, real food. Again, we say this all the time over ultra processed in general. There's actually strong language. So we're going to direct you to the website. It's really cool. Actually, they created a website called realfood.gov. If you go there, you can download there's 100-page PDF that talks about all the science behind the new guidelines. There's another PDF that goes over the scientific foundation's recommendations. There's a daily serving guide, and there's the actual dietary guidelines. If you do nothing else, when maybe we can attach this to the podcast, but it's a 10-page dietary guidelines. The language in it and the other things, I'm going to talk about it as we go. I have it pulled up on my computer. Very, very cool. It's only 10 pages long, speaks in language everyone can understand. You really got to check this out. But the language in there is what I really like because it's kind of educational. So there's strong language discouraging highly processed foods and added sugars, and it tells you why. And many of the past guidelines left this out. So I'm glad that's there.
And it's easy to tell somebody don't eat processed food, but as we know, because we deal with this with our patients every single day, everybody has a different definition on what processed food is, and you can think that you're eating a very whole food, plant predominant, high protein, minimal processed, but when we break this down with our patients, we find that their definition might have been significantly different than what it should be. So those are some guides that we want you guys to look in and be educated about, because you might have significantly amount of high processed food in your household.
And I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but I just want to emphasize bread is a processed food. I mean, for the most part. If you're making it at home, obviously it's significantly better.
Sure.
Sourdoughs, if you're milling your own grain, which is on our to-do list this spring, we want to start that. But anyway, it is a processed food. So, all right, whole food over processed food.
Yep.
This
So
next one makes me so excited.
healthy fats revisited. So the fats, we've known that the low fat was such a huge fad, and then with that, we knew that there was correlation of some hormone issues because and many issues, but one of them being hormones. But we know that fats are very beneficial for our body. They help with good cholesterol. They help, which is the precursor of every single hormone in our body. And so when we are on a diet that is almost no fat, it can be damaging to us. But once again, that is what is the whole fats. We're talking about good fats. We're not talking about your seed oils and your super processed fats that are highly refined. We're talking about good fats.
Good old fashioned saturated fat. It was made the villain for a long time, and I'm sorry, we've been saying this, saturated fat is not your enemy.
Yes.
And we do not have a specific episode on it, but I really wanna encourage you guys, go back, look at episode 3, food label, episode 4, food pyramid, episode 5, seed oils. These are all incredibly important. We go over all this stuff, and saturated fats come up in all of those.
Yeah, in that, and once again, this you have to have a good ratio. You
Yeah.
cannot be eating a significant amount of saturated fats. That's where you can, overpower, your diet and things like that. But yes, they are very needed. And when you do eat fats, they should be good fats. Like we said, beef tallow, grass-fed butter, olive oil, avocado oil, staying away, like nut seeds. Those are those good fats.
And you can get all of this information from the pyramid. Again, it's realfood.gov, but I want to emphasize, and I'm actually not, I know Mia's trying to keep it like, listen, we're not telling you to go out and eat 45 steaks a day, but I also don't really want you to be concerned. If you're eating a natural, food diet, you're not really going to get too much. Like if I personally eat meat at almost every meal. I'm going to do on my own personal social media. I'm going to go over my labs. My labs are absolutely phenomenal. My total cholesterol is around 220, and guess what? I don't care at all. I know that's over the recommended 200, but I have so much other data in my own blood work to show why I am not in an inflammatory state and why this is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry,
Same.
don't mean to dominate the microphone, but I did want to mention too, real quick, why Mia mentions the clean sources, the grass-fed beef and stuff, because when you eat an animal, you have to understand, you're basically consuming their metabolic history as well. So if you're getting traditional beef and traditional chicken, the beef are raised in these big slaughterhouses. The cows might never really see the light of
Conventional
day.
farming,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Same with the chickens where they're, millions of them, they don't even have room to move. They're fed basically corn-fed diets. Corn is gonna be high in your omega-6s, which are your inflammatory fats. When we want omega-3s, which are your sort of your anti-inflammatory is the way to think about it. So our ancestral ratio of omega-3, which is your good fats, to omega-6, which is your more inflammatory, our ancestral ratio was about 1 to 1. And ideal for us nowadays would be about less than 10 to 1, meaning, for every 10 inflammatory fats, you're getting 1 anti-inflammatory. That would be ideal, as close to 1 to 1 as possible. The average American is close to about 30 to 1 with their omega-6s to
Which is insane. And we know that
omega-3.
inflammation drives almost every success. So, and going back to that, it's not even just about the animal diet. Yes, that is tremendous, a huge point that you want to make sure that your animals are treated well, but it's the lack of movement. It's the lack of sunlight. It's that stressed environment. Remember,
That the animals lived in.
exactly.
Yeah.
So when we say conventional farming like that, it's an umbrella. Yes, their diet is significantly altered compared to what it should be out in nature. So you really want to have the animals that mimic that natural environment that they should be in. And then just like our body, when we're stressed, we release different hormones and things that, put us in that stressed environment, just like the animals. When they are confined in these very small areas, they have to fight for food. Maybe they're fighting with each other. They're walking around in their poop every day. There's no sunlight. Those are the things that when you have an animal in a very high stressed environment, their food is not going to be that great of quality. I mean, yes, it could be better than nothing, but not when there's much better options. So just be mindful of that. They say your average hamburger, ground hamburger meat contains over a couple hundred different cows in that, versus going to a local somebody who can have a pasture raised, something like that. If you're in the local area, Canal Junction, perfect example of how they make sure that that's a single cow that you're getting. They're very happy. You can visit their farm. Find sustainable farms around you if you can. It will really make a difference in your micro.
And the price, I truly is not that much different. I mean, with what we're seeing at the grocery store, yes, you will spend just a little bit more, but it's not like the difference of, $4 for a pound at the store versus $12 for a pound at some of these butchers. I mean, yes, that does exist, but you can do the work and find better.
Yep.
All right,
good.
let's keep
Healthy
moving.
fats. Don't
Healthy
avoid-
fats. So that also extends to dairy.
Mhm.
We've been saying this since the beginning. You do not need to buy low-fat cheese, low-fat milk, low-fat sour cream, low-fat yogurt. Get the full fats. These are the good fats. These are the fats you want.
Yeah. And dairy is a little bit something that like we're not super heavy on that in dairy, especially in your kiddos. If they have allergies, if they have eczema, those can be very allergenic for some. And reason why they do contain a good amount of hormones. I mean, they're meant to grow a little calf. So just be mindful of that. If you have sensitivity, if you have some stomach issues, skin issues, allergies, that might be the first thing that you can cut. Once you repair your gut, you can start to slowly introduce those unless it's a true allergy. But just keep in mind, you don't have to completely avoid those. Get good sourcing.
Yeah, the majority of our dairy comes from getting some organic Greek yogurt. We do good culture cottage cheese. We have like organic mozzarella cheese sticks because those make a good snack for me and the kids.
Yeah.
That's the majority of it. We do A2 whole milk. Sometimes we do
The raw
the
milk
raw milk as
option as
well.
well. So
And so that's where it comes from. And it's just really not a ton, but it's
no,
there.
yeah, absolutely.
So just real quick, and then the lower portion of the pyramid. So when we say they flipped the pyramid, the old food pyramid, you were supposed to get the base of the pyramid. That was the most of everything you would eat. And then you'd work your way up to the tip of the pyramid, which is smaller and that's less. When we say they flipped it upside down, they literally did. So it's an upside down triangle. The food at the top is now what you want the most of. And it works down to the tip at the bottom, which is the food you want the least of. And like we mentioned, your protein, your dairy, and your healthy fats, along with fruits and vegetables, are all at the top. It makes up 90% of the pyramid. All of that stuff is 90% of the pyramid. And then this lower little tip, which is less than 10% of the pyramid, is your grains and your refined carbohydrates. Again, something we talk about.
Yeah.
And let me just refer you back to episode, which one was it?
And
Go
this is
ahead.
just a good
Listen.
visual when
21,
people.
episode 21, wheat and gluten.
Okay. So you can go back and listen to our about the wheats, glutens, grains, and
Yeah.
things like that. But you have to imagine that, when you're going to a doctor's office and was the opposite way and it's telling you to eat whole grains and things like that. If you're not educated and really understand what that means, imagine all the sources that you're going to go to. Breads, bagels, which are refined carbs and refined sugars, wheat thins, Cheerios. Why? Heart healthy.
Triscuits. Yeah.
Whole grain, like those are good advertising things. Oatmeal, that they're the packets that are filled with all the added sugar and things like that. So we know and understand how easy it is to think that you're doing well because it's very manipulative marketing, and there's a reason for that because there's money to be made. So understanding that, once you flip this upside down, you understand that if you are doing the whole grains, it could be like the quinoa and lentils and legumes, and if we make the sourdough and things like that, like those are the things that you should be eating. You should still be avoiding your Cheerios, your wheat thins, and all of that. You want your good grains, your good protein. Those are just some.
Yeah, I really try to tell people that you want food that you can tell came from the air, the land, or the ocean, whether it walked or grew, in rather than things that, come
In a
from a
factory.
box. Yeah.
Yep.
And so just one last thing to mention about the food pyramid is they do still talk about daily servings and they go by calorie level, anywhere from 1,000 calories a day to 3,200 calories a day. I want to stress, and they actually talk about this too, calories genuinely for most people don't matter when you're eating real food every day. Now, that does not apply to everybody. Some people do truly have an eating disorder or they consume way too many calories, but it is very hard to consume too many calories when you're eating real food.
Yeah, agreed. And there's really no adding to that. I mean, you will never have to worry about counting calories if you're eating these whole foods. Why? Because just like Tim said, they're not processed. They're not going to be added with a bunch of sugars and things that are going to be high caloric and very little nutrient density.
We've seen probably around 10,000 patients for weight management over our careers, and I have not had a single patient that I've had count calories,
Yeah.
to this day.
Yep.
So anyway, and then just to give you an idea, serving size, so like 3 ounces of cooked meat is a serving. Same with poultry and seafood. 1 egg is a serving. Quarter cup of beans. That would be your proteins. And if you're on a 2,000 calorie diet, which most people are used to understanding, that you would be getting 3 to 4 servings per day. So let's say about 12 ounces of cooked meat. That's just under a pound, or the equivalent of like 4 eggs. These are not hard things to hit. I'm just kind of putting that out there. Like, you can get these goals. And we tell people, of course, minimum, just set your goals at grams. That's a little easier to track than serving sizes, but minimum 100 grams of protein a day. That still stands.
Yeah.
They recommend 3 servings of dairy, 3 servings of vegetables, and 2 servings of fruit. And again, we do not limit people on fruit. I don't care if you're diabetic. I say you can eat fruit. Now,
Pair it with protein.
yep,
and
exactly.
with
And
the
there are
sourdough.
better, you generally want like some of your berries and stuff, which are a little lower on the glycemic index. Remember, sometimes some of the best tasting or like tropical fruits are a little bit higher on the glycemic index. Things like your bananas, your pineapple, oranges, stuff like that. But again, they're still okay.
And just to add in there, don't forget to eat in season. So, of course, in the wintertime, you're probably eating a little bit less fruit. Why? If you're in a climate that doesn't have a lot of fruit that's naturally grown, we're like bears and we can go into that hibernation. We can store a little bit differently. But yes, do not limit fruit. But in the summertime, it might be a lot more fruit than it is in the winters. Pair it with the protein. If you're really worried and you're diabetic, take a swift walk after that. Your muscles will pull that glucose right in. and very beneficial. Don't limit natural foods.
Agreed. All right. So, who produces these guidelines? So, you guys know we try very hard not to get political at all on this podcast, and we're not going to right now. So, the one thing I want to say about this is if you dislike the current political administration, please try not to let that allow you to skew the importance of these changes because any true health expert, anyone who truly understands metabolism, diet, and nutrition will tell you that this is the best thing that has happened to the food guidelines ever. Literally ever. So let's start with that. So the guidelines are mandated by law to be updated every 5 years by USDA and Health and Human Services. So what they have is this independent dietary guidelines advisory committee. It's called the DGAC. And the DGAC are the ones who are truly behind this. And so when someone says like, "Oh, I don't trust Kennedy or I don't trust Health and Human Services or any of that," I just want you to know that this committee that came up with this is composed of 9 different PhDs from around the country. They're chaired by Dr. Christopher Ramsden, who's an MD, PhD. He's a US Public Health Service Commission core member. These people know what they're talking about. And you can go in there and you can see everybody's name. You can see where they practice, what their specialty is, and then you can go look up sort of like their history and what makes them qualified to come up with this. So I think it's important to understand that. And this, for the first time, or at least from what I understand, they also did look for any financial disclosures, like to make sure the people who were advising this weren't going to benefit from it
Like they
monetarily.
have in the
Yeah.
past. I think this was what, a year or two ago. We probably brought this podcast, but when it comes to the decision making for food pyramid and what gets allowed to change, et cetera, they had, I think it was 19 out of the 22 people who sat on the panel at that time had financial gain. So this is where they were saying that you should be eating the fake egg whites or the fake eggs versus real eggs. And if you go back into, some of these people on the panel, they had significant financial ties to make this go through. And that's why, when you read this, anybody who's in the wellness field, you'd be like, what in the world am I reading? Like, there's no way that we thought it was a joke. And then you go through and you're like, they have financial gains. So quite honestly, I haven't even dug in to see who's behind this, but I know, given what I know now and how I practice and what I know to be true after the thousands of hours that we've put into our wellness journey and education, that it doesn't matter to me who made this. This is definitely the right decision, but
Agreed.
it's making some moves.
Yep. And they, like I said, it's a 90-page document that has the scientific guidelines behind where they got this. So it's
Yep.
pretty interesting. And it's all right there at realfood.gov.
Good.
Okay. So then once they review it, then the current leadership puts the final stamp of approval and then you see it come out. Why are they controversial? I don't feel like this one is significantly controversial, but I do feel like there's still some naysayers out there.
I think they're more like the negative effect of that is that people are saying that you're jumping right to like a high red meat, high saturated diet, which yes and no. I think that you're going to be significantly healthier if you follow this food pyramid. And we'll get into the statistics on how sick and near deadly that most Americans are with our current food and system.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the controversy comes from, well, red meat is dangerous and all these other things. And it's like, well, if you look at why potentially red meat was dangerous, like they're pairing that to people who were eating processed burgers where like, was it the red meat or was it the oils and everything else that you just ate? Versus having a clean diet. Because like I said, I mean, we practice what we preach and we eat an incredibly clean diet. I personally eat red meat probably 5 times a week, if not 6. My triglycerides were 43. My cholesterol panel is amazing. So we have some proof to back that up that if you eat clean, non-processed, back to the basics, that you really shouldn't have to worry about some of these things.
Yeah, we've said this before. So first off, the studies that determined saturated fat was a big risk for heart disease were flawed. They were completely flawed. They were based on, some highly inflammatory foods that were causing these particular mice and rats to have all the issues. I can't remember the details offhand. I'd have to look it up again. I've listened to it 50 times. I can just never remember. But the point is they were flawed. And then we can see from the and that was done in the 60s or 70s. And then we can see from the last 40 years following that exactly what has happened by removing saturated fats, going to lower fat diets, and more whole grain, which was supposed to be healthy.
Yeah.
Guess what? Heart disease has exploded. Obesity has exploded. We all know this, as we're not telling anything new. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But the other thing I want to mention again is all the time people tell me, oh, my triglycerides were high, so I have to reduce the fat that I'm eating. Triglycerides do not come from saturated fat. Triglycerides are the majority of that is coming from your added sugars, your processed grains and carbohydrates, and alcohol. Those are the three main things. So think of your pops, your candies, your breads, your pastries and alcohol. Those are what cause your triglycerides to be high. Your body has a process of what's called de novo lipogenesis, where we make our own fat. We can significantly outproduce any food that we eat in terms of pumping out our own triglycerides and our own cholesterol. So just so you know, the dietary component is not a major contributor to that. So if your doctor tells you your triglycerides are high, you need to remove fat from your diet. You need to stop them in their tracks and say, no, that is not
Because
right.
we know what the replacement is, because I've heard this story 1,000 times, and they'll tell you to stop eating eggs and to eat Honey Nut Cheerios instead. That it's like the worst advice that you could ever give somebody who's on a health journey. So just remember, stay away from that processed food. Breads, bagels, if it has a barcode, if you can't understand ingredients, put it back.
Okay. So, yep, these are the bottom lines. We have to remember these guidelines are what shape school meals, military food, and the federal nutrition programs. And this will also influence clinical advice, meaning this is more than just a graphic. Like, this is going to filter into our military, our kids, hopefully doctor's advice. Finally, hopefully this will filter into doctor's advice. But this is a big deal. And I think this is the start. We talk about all the time, food is medicine or food is poison. We are literally, for the first time in over 40 years, trying to reduce the poison aspect of food and increase the medicine aspect. I
And
think it's
remember,
awesome.
and we preach this all the time, a lot of providers are not like us where they don't dive in further and they don't go out and get hundreds of hours of nutritional guidance outside of of what they were taught. So remember, if your doctor is telling you something, like I said, like the food pyramid for the however long that's been around, they're looking at a food pyramid that was slapped on the wall that they got less than a semester worth of nutritional education on. They are just doing what they're told. And so that's what this is so we feel like life changing for so many people because now we have doctors because there's some patients who are diehard. My doctor told me this, XYZ, I have to do all of this. So that's why we're really happy about this because for once, we're hoping that the doctors that just do what they're told can start to listen to this and really start to impact their patients on a positive way for once instead of polypharmacy. Every single time they're coming back, they have a new medical condition and they're never really assessing, well, it's likely
Yeah.
this is
We
contributing to
walk
this.
through this all the time, and it's such an obvious progression. Like, people, as they age, they start to get obese from the standard American diet. Then their blood pressure starts running high and their doctor puts them on a blood pressure medication. That doesn't really change anything. They haven't changed any of the root causes. A little bit more time goes by and all of a sudden their cholesterol's high and now they're put on a statin. This puts some strain on their liver. Their liver enzymes get a little bit worse. They start to develop fatty liver because they're still gaining weight. And now guess what? One of the side effects of statins can be the causing type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance. A few more years go by, they end up on metformin or another diabetes drug. There's 3 of the 5 drugs that the average American's on by the age of 55. Now, from all this poor diet, all these medications and pills, they start having a little bit of acid reflux, so they get put on a PPI. I mean, it's the same thing we see all the time. So
Every day.
for the people who argue out there that you're so wrong, everything's wrong about this, what are we doing right? And I say this all the time. If you can't look around and see that we are in absolute health disarray as a country, that's a problem on you. That's not a problem on
Yeah.
me.
And I
Let's revisit that for a minute. This may be a review for our current audience, but hopefully we're getting some new people. And the last time we talked about some of this was at least 7, 8 months ago. So we'll revisit some of our old episodes in season 2, and we'll have plenty of new content as well. Also, just to give you guys an update, we are working on having a couple more guests on, trying to expand that as well.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's talk a little bit statistics here. Obesity is literally everywhere. You can find it walking around. Anywhere you go out in public, you know that we are not the same people that we were decades ago when you look back on pictures and things like that of people at the beach, et cetera. So nearly 40% of US adults are classified as obese and about 73 to 74% of the US adults are classified as overweight or obese. So obese is obviously higher than overweight. So majority up to 74% of Americans are in that
Of
classification.
either overweight or
Yes,
obese,
and then
which is that
40%.
would technically be a BMI of 25 or higher.
Yeah. And then up to 40%, which is a significant amount of Americans. I really hope you guys understand how much
It's
that is.
100 million
Yeah,
Americans.
they are classified as obese, which is a BMI of over 30.
100 million people living in America
Yeah.
are
And
obese.
your body can only sustain that for so long before you will have metabolic dysfunction, resistance, fatty liver, type 2 diabetes, all these things that Tim. So,
Yeah, kids and
um,
teens are the worst.
yeah,
Ages 12 to 19, 22% are obese.
yeah,
Not overweight, obese.
1 in 4.
1 in
1 in
4
4
kids
kids. So you
almost, yeah.
line up 4 kids and one of them, every single 4 kids, one of them will have this is obesity issue.
And
It is a problem.
and kids age so that was ages 12 to 19. Kids age 6 to 11 are not far behind. 20%, 1 in 5 are obese. Guys, this is a problem. This is a systemic problem. This isn't a parenting problem. This isn't
In
this
a
is a
doctor-led
national
controlled system
problem.
that is very
Agreed.
prediabetes, a massive silent epidemic, estimated of 38% of adults, which is
Pretty
just
close to
under
100
100
million
million
again. Yeah.
Americans
Let's
that
just
have
call it 100
yeah,
million. Yeah.
prediabetes, a sugar that's higher than normal, but not yet diabetic. I can't tell you how many times I think this with my patients. They're coming in at an A1C of 5.6, and they're like, "Oh, everything's great. My PCP said nothing." You're point 0.1 away
Yeah,
from prediabetes. You
5.7 is
know your
prediabetes.
fasting
Yeah.
insulin is high. You know you're going to be diabetic by or pre-diabetic the next time you come into your appointment. Why isn't your PCP
But
saying
the doctor's saying, "All right, your labs look good." Why? Because that value technically falls within
within
normal.
normal? And
Please remember, optimal and
yeah,
normal are not
and
the same
monitor
thing.
your own trends. If over the years that you see that things are slowly creeping up, your doctor is going to still tell you it's fine until the day that you walk in that office and you leave with 3 prescriptions that you didn't have the appointment before. And they told you before that everything was fine, but we know. And this is what I always tell my patients when I'm looking at labs. This is a yellow flag that's waving, your body's waving. This is a red flag that your body's waving. If you do not change things around, I can predict what is going to get worse on your lab values. And your PCP should be doing
I
that.
just talked with a guy yesterday, super nice guy, 61 years old, goes to the doctor many times a year. He's only on one medication. His fasting he sent me labs and it'll show you the trend. I had 2022, 23, 24, and 25. His fasting blood glucose has been 110 or higher since 2022. And I said, "Hey, what did your doctor say to you about this?" He said, "Nothing. I'm doing great." I was like, "No, bud, you're not." Yeah.
So we can predict it.
So
Anyway,
real quick, she said almost 40%, almost so 100 million Americans are basically obese and pre-diabetic. And at 33, 25% of teenagers, let's say 20 to 25% of kids, make it easy, are obese. And 33% of teenagers show signs of prediabetes, meaning metabolic dysfunction. So maybe elevated postprandial glucoses, maybe elevated fasting glucose. I don't have the data on that at the moment, but it's a significant amount, and that's a problem. We are setting them up for all of the diseases, the chronic diseases of adulthood, the standard American diseases.
yep. And as we know, chronic disease for a very long time has been the normal. It's not the exception. So, an estimated 129 million people, which is nearly 1 in every 2 adults, have at least one major chronic disease. These don't always run solo, and very, very seldom do they run solo. What do I mean by that? That you'll start off with one of these, and it won't be long before you have significant more of the metabolic issues, because once your body is in an inflamed state, you open the door to almost every single disease process possible. So that's how you're like, man, I wasn't like this a year ago. One medication, absolutely, if you do not change your lifestyle, will lead to a polypharmacy, which means significant more.
For sure. 5 by the age of 55 for the average American.
Yeah.
So how did we get here? I mean, it seems pretty obvious. We can connect the dots, and we are pretty big on there's no one problem. I'm not going to blame every single thing on the food system. I'm not going to blame everything on pharmaceuticals. I'm not going to blame everything on, all
It's the
it's
perfect
just
terrible
this,
storm.
yeah, the toxic sludge, everything that we live in. So more than half of the calorie, but talking about food, that's why I'm bringing this up. More than half of the calories that we consume as Americans on average come from ultra processed foods. Chips, sodas, sugary cereals, packaged snacks, basically the middle of the grocery store. 50% of our caloric intake every day is essentially metabolic garbage, inflammatory foods, endocrine disruptors. I mean, all the bad things, gut disruptors. Oh, I forgot the biggest thing I wanted to say a minute ago. I'm going back to the dietary guidelines for Americans. I thought this was so cool. Remember how I told you you can go to realfood.gov, you can download the actual guidelines. It's a 10-page document. It was really cool. On page 3 at the bottom, they have a big blue paragraph that says gut health. Your gut contains trillions of bacteria and other microorganisms called the microbiome. A healthy diet supports a well-balanced microbiome and healthy digestion. Highly processed foods can disrupt this balance, while vegetables, fruits, fermented foods, and high fiber foods support a diverse microbiome, which may be beneficial for health. I thought that was really
We've
cool.
never seen that.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, we've never seen that in the guidelines ever.
Yeah.
And that's truly life changing, because we always say if your gut is in a disarray, you can throw everything out of the window because your gut controls so much. And it's not even your gut, it's your microbiome. We are like we've talked what episode is it where we talk about the gut? We are more a microbiome than we have our own DNA, which is a crap ton of
Mhm.
microbes that control everything going on. And if those are not healthy, nothing else is healthy.
Episode 13, gut
In order
health.
for them to be healthy, you have to eat well. And so he said that about half of Americans eat ultra processed food. Unfortunately, children are even worse. It's 65. We have the stat it's about just under 65%, although there are some other studies that say it's upwards to 75% of their daily intake is ultra processed food. We feel you guys. The package, the meals on the go. This has to change because our food is not only getting significantly more processed, it's getting more chemical based, and we've never seen food like this before. And I hear this all the time. Well, I was fine back in my kid years. Look at the panel of even a Dorito bag compared to what it is now. It is not the same food. It
Yeah,
is more addictive. It is more processed.
I would take 1980s Doritos, as a
Yeah,
snack. And
I'm kidding compared to what we have now.
I mean,
Uh,
McDonald's French fries used to be potatoes fried in beef
beef
tallow.
tallow, yeah,
Yeah.
and salt. Yep.
I mean, is it
That.
is it a health food? No,
Yeah.
but is that a significantly better junk snack?
I
100%.
mean, look at what Chick-fil-A just came out and said what there's 65 or 55
55, yeah.
ingredients
Well,
in
they
each
didn't come
chicken
out and say it.
patty.
It's just,
Well, yeah, like
more,
I'm
yeah.
saying, yeah, it came out. It's unreal. So you guys, you really have to go back to the basics because we are not the same as our food is not the same as it was before, and our children will not be the children that they need to be and grow into smart and in their brain and everything that we need them to be if we do not change.
Let's just take a moment and ruin Chick-fil-A for everybody, can we? I mean, it's pure trash. It's pure
Yeah,
trash.
it
Listen,
is.
it tastes like nectar from the gods.
Yeah.
I agree. I could drink Chick-fil-A as I bathe in it. It's
Yeah.
delicious, no doubt. But guys, it's pure trash.
Yep.
It's pure
Read the
trash.
ingredients on
Yeah.
the like Polynesian sauce and things like that. I mean, if you want processed food, there it is. So
Agreed.
okay, so when you put this all together, rise in obesity, prediabetes, and diabetes, it's not just a coincidence. It is a predictable outcome of decades of this food environment dominated by industrial, shelf stable, and nutrient stripped products. So once again, food is either medicine or poison. We tell this every single day to my patients. Every single meal that you have will either fight or fuel a disease process that's going in your body. And for some people who say, "Oh, I'm healthy," your body is in that homeostasis, and if it can maintain that, great. But that is because if you're eating well and things like that. But just because you're not sick now, your body can only handle so much of a toxic load before it loses that power to be homeostasis for the cells to recognize that these other cells might be damaging and to self-destruct. Your body is constantly every single day fighting toxins, underlying infections, things that we come into with the environment, all of these poisons that we're exposed to, including our food. And one day, your body will not be able to compensate for that, and then you will have a
Yeah.
disarray of your body.
Compensation is good until you can't compensate
Yeah.
anymore.
And then you have to
Homeostasis will
change.
fail. It reminds me of a movie from the 90s. Did you ever see Biodome with Pauly Shore?
Are you asking me if I can? Highly not.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. They're trying to achieve homeostasis in this biodome after they had this big party and ruined
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But
So I
anyway.
mean that's what we're, saying. So every single meal, like I said, even if you're starting young and you're like, these meals I'm doing good, that's because your body can compensate. And one day that will no longer happen. And then you will have a big disarray of your body. Inflammation, insulin resistance, chronic disease, and that food that is causing that is poison.
So wrapping this up, let's remember. So one other thing, we talked about the gut microbiome. We talk about supporting the microbiome all the time. And remember, you are what you eat. You crave what you eat. Your body wants what you eat. So the bacteria in your gut are responsible for a lot of your appetite, your cravings, your hormones. I mean, your metabolism. It all does start with your gut bacteria. What you feed it is what will grow. When you're feeding the whole foods, vegetables, fruits, lean proteins, healthy fats, and fiber, those are the bacteria that grow. And when they're hungry, they make you hungry and you crave what they want. So this can help regulate your metabolism, your gut health, your blood sugar, inflammation, immunity. It all comes back to that. So in that sense, food is medicine. Conversely, food can be poison when you're eating stuff that's engineered for palatability, loaded with sugar, refined carbohydrates, additives. Think of all the different anti-caking agents, gut binders, your polysorbates, these forever chemicals. These promote inflammation, insulin resistance, and chronic disease. That's how food can be poison. We have to shift towards food being medicine with our nutrient dense diets, our high quality foods, and avoiding the ultra processed food. All right,
All right.
New Year's resolutions.
make
Let's
this,
talk about this
yeah,
real quick.
a little quicker of a segment here.
Yeah.
We know that about half the adult population makes New Year's resolutions, and most people fall right off that bandwagon in just a few months, with about 8-ish% achieving their long-term New Year's resolution. So that means that the odds are forever not in your favor if you made a New Year's
Oh, look
resolution.
at you quoting a movie.
You will likely fail. So, and why? We're vague. I'll eat better. You know how many times I hear that? What's your New Year's resolution? I'm going to eat better. What does that mean? Because if you don't know what that means and you didn't lay out clear guidelines for yourself, there you go. You're the one falling off the bandwagon. Punitive, just stop. I'm just going to stop things, or unconnected to identity or the environment and what's going on. So, we'll get into that, the science of habit and behavior of change and how to be successful. But this is backed up by psychology and neuroscience as well. So, behavior change follows patterns, not leaps. We are wired to repeat actions that feel rewarding and fit into our routine. So, if you only focus on stopping processed food cold turkey, you can set yourself up for failure because your habits and your environment don't change. So, a big thing that I feel like really helps with our kids as well is understanding the why. My son, all the time, he'll be like, I'm hungry for a snack. What you need? Well, I know I need something with protein. Like he just,
He
and
does.
he's
Yeah.
4. So once you start to understand the why, and I can ask him, why do you need protein? To build strong muscles, to feel full, to not crave junk. Like my 4-year-old knows this. And this is what I'm saying. Like the more you educate yourself, the more you can pass this down to your family. And this isn't like that we're like forcing this on our kids. They pick up and learn just naturally. Why? Because your habits that you are subconsciously doing or not even aware that you're doing this, your children are watching every step. How many times do I come out here and work out? I don't even ask my kids. They're in here hanging out in the playroom. They'll come in. My son will grab, who's 4, grabs his own little weighted vest, will start walking on the treadmill. I don't ask him to do that. He's 4, but he does it because he knows that that's healthy habits and he wants to follow mom and dad. And that is the building block. It starts in your home. If you're the person who buys groceries, if you're the person who's responsible for healthy habits in your house, if that doesn't change, you can be responsible for what's to follow with your kiddos.
I agree. And kind of talking about, we're going to go into that a little bit more, but talking about resolutions in our house, we don't do New Year's resolutions. We've done lifestyle
Yeah,
resolutions.
they're
We've done
forever
lifetime
resolutions.
resolutions.
Yeah.
We've said, hey, this is the time where we're going to change what we eat. That was a few years ago. Mia has oftentimes, we need to clean out our pantry again. We need to improve our pantry again. We're slipping a little, or there's things in here. Maybe the products or the ingredients have changed. So it's not, it's just a lifestyle resolution. I want to live longer, happier, healthier. I want to be around. I want to be doing the things I love when I'm 80. I don't want to be wheelchair or bed bound, and I'm going to make those changes and those sacrifices
Yeah.
now.
We live on a large farm. I have to be healthy and strong enough to be able to maintain this even in my older years, to run around with their kids, my kids and their kids. And you just have to build habits. Just a few examples as far as this was maybe 2 years ago. No high fructose corn syrup, no dyes in our house. Some things are added sugar. Sure, our kombucha, which our kids love, it's a fermented probiotic drink that has some added sugar.
The brand we bought the other day, though, our oldest, my 9-year-old, she looked at it and she said, Dad, this has a lot of sugar. There was 21 grams in
Yeah.
this particular one, which we never
Yeah,
normally
that was
have
the
that much.
brand that, yeah.
But she did say, and only 6 of those are natural. The other, 15 grams were added
Added.
sugar. She's like, so this probably isn't good. And I
Yeah.
was like, you're right. We're not going to get that again.
Right, and they were out of stock of the normal one. We were not paying attention and
Yeah.
grabbed the other one, and so that's why it matters. And we usually are very good about and diligent about flipping labels over, but it takes habit, it takes routine, and it takes the reason why. Because if you don't understand why you're doing something, likely that New Year's resolution is just going to fall away. If it doesn't truly mean something to you and you don't know the depth of why you're doing it and the impact that change will have, you will likely not be successful. So that's why we always teach the why.
Yep. Behavior change follows patterns, not leaps, like Mia just said.
Yep.
Remember, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yep.
I think the other thing to remember is that an early failure is not fatal. It's just data. It's just a data point. It doesn't mean you fell off, you need to quit, screw it, scrap the whole program. I don't care if you fail every day for the first 7 days. That doesn't mean I need to start over next year. It means I'm changing my life. It's not easy. There's going to be things along the way. So expect those lapses. It's just how you respond to them. People who recover quickly and adjust strategies are far more successful than those who beat themselves up or quit, obviously.
And it's not that like when we go out in environments that, like a birthday party or something, we don't know how to function. Like our kids absolutely get cake and ice cream.
Yeah.
Do I scrape off the dye on the top of that most times? Yes. I throw that frosting right in the garbage because I don't know about your kiddos, but mine don't need that. They turn psycho. But those are the things that we understand kids are kids and they can have treats and they do eat lots of treats, but man, do they eat a lot of healthy fruits and things like that. And now that they are so accustomed to that we've been living, when we get a big thing of ice cream or something, let's say we go out and we're they're dished ice cream, they don't ever finish it because versus every other kid probably comes back for more helpings because it's too sweet for them. They'll take a couple bites, they'll be done. It's just not what they're used to. Your taste buds start to change, your gut microbiome start to change, and that is a change that we will forever teach to them to carry on.
And I think this is probably one of the biggest ones. So we said behavior changes patterns. Early failure is not fatal. And I think one of the biggest thing is identity will conquer goals any day. You can't have a goal of being healthier, a goal of losing weight. That has to be your identity. We have made this our identity. Everybody who knows us knows this is what we are. We eat healthy, we do healthy things, we live a healthy life.
And it's not, and I always say this all the time, it's not negotiable. I will have my patients all the time tell me, well, I just didn't have time to work out, but that is non-negotiable. You can do a 20-minute workout session 3 days a week and that be incredibly beneficial for your body than to do nothing at all. And everybody has the same time of the day as any other person. And eventually that'll catch up to you and repeat look back and say, how many times did I tell that to myself? How many years have I been going saying the same thing? I don't have time. My work is busy, kids, sports, all these things. You have time. Bring your family with you in the workout rooms like we do. Make it a group effort. Go for a walk after every meal. Take your family with you. You can still have that bonding time and not feel like you're losing time with your family. Make it work. You can have a walking treadmill like I do and have a laptop pad. If you have laptop work to do, you have no excuse. I walk 5 days a week on my treadmill with a weighted vest and still work on my laptop because I'm an incredibly busy person, but I cannot lose that time for myself or else I feel terrible. I do red light therapy every morning. We now got a sauna. We lift weights. Those are the things that become you, and that's a non-negotiable. The saying that I don't have time or I don't know what I'm doing. This is 2026 now. You got ChatGPT, you got things that can help you outside of your provider to build better habits, and the only excuse you have is yourself.
Yep.
Period.
A good mantra or a good phrase that you could use to start with is I am someone who eats real food and moves regularly.
Yep.
That's all you need. That's who I am. That's my identity. If you say that to yourself, if you make that yourself, then it becomes what you do.
And one thing there that I hear this a lot with my patients as well is I don't want to feel like I'm on a diet. You don't. And if you are one of my patients, you'll understand this too. You can literally eat an abundance of this food as medicine guide that we give you, all of the things that we go over. But the way I eat, the way Tim eats, the way my kids eat, we're not on a diet. We eat as much as we possibly want, but those foods are nutrient dense, less processed, or almost minimally to no processed, and we feel amazing and we don't feel restrictive. So
No.
those are the things that you need to change. And if you feel like you have an addiction to food or that's a problem for you, start eating an abundance of these non-processed food and you will slowly start to change your gut microbiome, which will slowly start to change the signals to your brain. You can do it.
Yep. So, real quick, we got a couple minutes left and just some tips on how to make real, lasting, forever changes.
Yep.
So, the most important thing is to have specific, measurable, and repeatable goals. So, instead of I'm going to eat better, you say I'm going to add one vegetable to every meal, or I am going to get 100 grams of protein a day. And instead of saying I'm going to exercise more, you say I'm going to do 20 minutes of resistance training 3 times per
Yep.
week.
You have to be measurable because you can't attain something that's not measurable. So just stop saying I'll exercise more. You have to write that out and what that means. Put it in your calendar, put it in your phone, make that time for yourself. If you have meetings, block your workouts. If you work from home, block your workouts so nobody can book over your time. If you do not put yourself first, you will collapse before.
Environment engineering is
Yep.
something we've talked about. So you have to clear out ultra processed food because you have to remove temptation. So, what that looks like to you, maybe it's getting rid of 50% of things. Listen, I know budgets can be tight. I'm not asking anybody to waste food. If you feel you need to eat something you bought, that's fine. But say a goal when I finish this food that I've paid for, this is what I'm going to buy in the future. Make sure you are not buying ultra processed foods. Stock whole foods that are easy to get, that are easy to reach. You should have the good things in the front of your refrigerator where your eyes go to, where your hands go to. And then plan meals so that decisions don't rely on willpower. It's a
Yeah.
schedule. We
And
scheduled this meal for lunch and dinner.
for sure. We meal prep our meals a few times a week so we know exactly what we're eating. Another thing that was beneficial for us when we started this journey is to do a click list. Why? Because when you get to the store, I don't know what it is, but just all willpower goes out the window and you come home with Doritos and Oreos and pop and all these things that you knew you wouldn't buy if you're sitting at home staring at this on a screen and saying, I shouldn't get this. I shouldn't add this to my cart. Goes back to my patient who had a crazy addiction to ice cream. She would eat like a pint a night. And I said, you live alone. Who's grocery shopping for you? And she said, me. And I said, then stop buying it. And then she said, when I get to the store, all the things. So do a click list. Make sure that you're only, shopping for what you need and that's it. Do your click list for a while. That way you don't have to be tempted by this in the store. And that really had helped shape us to getting that food out of our house for a while. And then those habits stick. And then you can walk right past them in an aisle now.
Yep. And then the last one, accountability and feedback. So track your patterns, not just outcomes, not just looking at the scale. Did I hit my 3 times a week of resistance? Did I work out the 20 minutes? Data. You need that data.
Yeah.
Am I adding one vegetable to every meal? How many days am I getting 100 grams of protein? And guys, you don't have to do this forever. I know like the My Fitness Pals and the Chronometer, the tracking apps can get tedious. They can, feel overwhelming. Just maybe do it at the beginning until you get in a routine. And if you don't need to do it, don't. But somewhere you need to have accountability. And then make sure you celebrate wins. Consistency needs to be rewarded and celebrated. You can reward yourself with anything. Maybe it's taking a day off. Maybe it's having a, coveted snack. I personally don't like that as a reward, but some people do. Just remember to celebrate and take time to pat yourself on the back for what
Yeah.
you've done is what I'm trying to
For
say.
sure. And those apps, like Tim said, they are not forever. I get it. They're tedious, they're annoying as heck, and they are really not sustainable long term. That's
No.
not the goal.
Even
So
the Yucca in the
yeah.
store and
Well,
stuff is
that
annoying.
right, and it's not the goal. I mean, we haven't used yucca in a few years. Why? Because we built habits. We are educated about now what we can and cannot or should not have in our house, and it just
We
becomes
can
your
read
lifestyle.
labels now too,
That
yeah.
is what we mean by lifestyle. Do I track my protein? No. Do I know what a good day of protein looks like? Yes. And that is because you have to build. It's like learning, reading a book. You have to make sure that you're building those habits, using those tools, tracking your protein, understanding your workout routine, maybe understanding the body composition scale on your wellness journey. Stick to those habits. And then once you feel like, okay, I know what a good day of protein looks like, I know what a good day of non processed food looks like, you ditch those apps because those are not sustainable. And then the habits stay, you feel better. And then there's your lifestyle change, which is our goal.
Yeah, and just to piggyback what Mia's saying, when I say, quote, "I know what a good day of protein looks like," I also know the grams. So I know that my protein shake is 30 grams of protein. I know every egg is 6 grams. A lot of times we have 2, so there's 12 grams of protein. My organic mozzarella cheese stick is 6 grams of protein. 4 ounces of my beef sticks are 16 grams of protein.
Mhm.
So anyway, it's not that, I'm just eyeballing, this is a good day. I know these numbers in my head over
Yeah.
time. I can very quickly see it's 1 in the afternoon and I'm over 100 grams of protein. I pretty much don't pay attention at that point.
Right. And then you mimic those days and you don't need to continue to count in your head, but you mimic the good protein days. You know that naturally your breakfast and lunch are going to be around the same thing that they normally have been for your habits. So that is building that habit so it can be lifestyle because nothing is ever going to stick if you feel like you're in this constant diet phase or if you feel like you're constantly punishing yourself. That is not the way to ever be sustainable. You have to make it a lifestyle change, know why, and then it becomes habit and it's significantly easier.
Yeah, so I think here's kind of what I would want people to walk away with, that numbers don't lie. Nearly 40% of adults are obese and even more are overweight. Nearly 100 million people have prediabetes, and chronic disease now affects half the population. That's not genetic fate. That's the result of decades of nutrient poor, ultra processed eating. For too long, we've treated food like basically fuel from a gas station, cheap, tasty, convenient, but it's ultimately harmful. And so we really want to flip that script and we want to get you from food being poison to food being medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. And about the New Year's resolutions, science is clear. Failure does not mean defeat. Early missteps are a part of the habit change process because our brains are rewriting that neural pathway, and we need that to build those habits. So, what matters isn't perfection; it's that persistence. You had a bad day, you drop it, you start over again. You don't punish yourself for it. You pick up where you left off. And real permanent change doesn't come from just a January promise. It comes from, daily identity based choices, deciding who you are and what you want to do and why these habits matter to you. So our advice to you is let's build systems that support the real food and consistent strength training, being very mindful of alcohol, aka try to avoid it completely, and lifestyle that promotes health instead of disease because you are what you eat. And that is not a New Year's resolution. That is going to be your life reset.
Thank you for joining in. We appreciate all the support. We look forward to the second season of our podcast. Please share this with someone who might benefit from it. And just a reminder,
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not medical advice. It is not a substitute for professional care, diagnosis, and or treatment. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health routine. And remember that you have the power. Join us in next time to get more knowledge.
Thank you.